welcome everybody to our first episode of Unhinged and Unranked, our introductory episode. First host is me. I'm Eighth. I'm an uncouth sleuth with 2 bottles of vermouth, and I've also got a .gov email address. I like space games, and I run a gaming community because I'm a masochist.
Hi, Slash Rank here. I'm the stereotypical toxic rage baiting meta gamer. I'm a former FPS addict and a longtime MMO player. Though Guild Wars 2 is my main game right now, I've been known to dabble in a little bit of open world survival games like DayZ, Ark, and Valheim. And I'm also a huge fan of RPGs like Elder Scrolls and Baldur's Gate.
I'm Ross. I've been in the MMO scene for a couple decades now. I've played a lot of tabletop role-playing games, anime, know a lot more about industry tech trends than I care to. Looking forward to digging into some old MMO skeletons, see what we can find in the closet.
Right on, right on.
All right, so what would we feel right now are the biggest modern MMOs currently? And by modern, probably not that modern, but kind of modern.
Yeah, because there aren't very many new ones. I wish we could say Guild Wars, but Guild Wars really isn't one of the big three, right? It's probably still Final Fantasies.
I'm not sure if New World knocked it out. That was the recent 2021 release from Amazon. But I think the big three are probably World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy, and maybe a tight running up from like BDO or Guild Wars 2 next.
Could
New
be,
World's
could be.
still up there, actually. Like, on the Steam charts at least, New World of Turnip's still up there for near the top for like the MMO tag on Steam. Funnily enough, the actual top is Path of Exile 2 and Path of Exile, which I would argue is probably not really MMOs, even though they're persistent.
Why you say Path of Exile? How'd that end up in an MMO bucket?
I guess
That's
because
what I'm
it
saying.
is MMO, but it's not an MMO RPG like what we're mainly
Okay,
focused on.
that's fair.
It's
So I guess
arguably an
that you got to be
MMO,
careful with
but
MMO saying that because it's
yeah,
a lot of things are in that are encompassed by the word MMO or the acronym MMO rather.
I mean, they also Smite to an MMO category on Steam, so like, it's very big.
Steam's little filter system is a little messed up because Baldur's Gate is also considered an MMO, which
Yeah.
doesn't really make sense to me.
One of the like top MMO stat sites? Baldur's Gate 3 is the number 4 MMO right now. It's like it's not an MMO, man.
You're like, what? What is this?
Pretty wild
And
classifier there. What about Destiny? Destiny is a fairly modern MMO, but it's not often lumped in with them.
That's true. There's probably a lot of people playing
it's up
Destiny.
there. It's actually number 3 on Steam behind both Path of Exiles.
I mean, if you put Destiny in there, you got to put Warframe kind of in there too.
Oh,
Yeah,
true, Warframe. Yeah, Warframe is huge.
those it's
Uh,
almost all of those are almost like an interim genre between like what we think of as an MMO and like a general multiplayer game. Like they're very live service and multiplayer heavy, but they're also not like the scale of networking that we typically assume as an MMO. They're almost more like Guild Wars 1. Like,
I mean, Elder Scrolls exists. Imagine murder hoboing around Skyrim, but now you can with friends. That's pretty much Elder Scrolls. It seems very single player oriented for an MMO.
it is. It's pretty much what it says on the box. It wasn't at
Yeah.
launch. It was very linear at launch, but then it like pivoted a lot more to being more like an Elder Scrolls game over time.
The story really shines in that game, that's why. And you can run through the campaigns by yourself without having any outside help.
Star Wars Old Republic
I don't know of the
exists.
following of those.
Since the launch of Star Wars Old Republic, it had a ton of hype around the launch, but it very much lost steam just after. With
Are they still updating it?
They are still updating it, and I think that might be more the way of what why these are the top MMOs is not just because they're still being updated, but because they do have in-game content, and it's and that in-game content is what is receiving updates specifically. Well, in the topic of MMOs over time, right? Uh, there really has been a lot of changes, especially in some of the niches starting to emerge. Some of which I would say, like the Black Desert, which is very grindy. It's very easy to keep on. You're kind of building your empire and also micromanaging it the whole way. Then you have the Eve out there, which is totally been out there, but it's like spreadsheet the MMO.
Yeah,
with
seriously.
official Excel integration.
No.
Really? I didn't
It,
even
yeah,
know about
they
that. I
have
knew that a lot of
actual
people used it,
Excel
but
integration.
that's crazy. I mean, at
Spreadsheets and
that point, that
squiggles.
sounds more like a job than than a
That's pretty much
game.
what
Yeah,
Eve
and
is.
that's
Yeah,
honestly a lot of critique that Black Desert Online gets is it's like a job because of the kind of the endless grinding aspect.
Yeah.
yeah, they keep it
Then you
running at
have the
all
other
times.
niches like Elder Scrolls, which is kind of evolved into there. It's technically an MMO, but it really has more of the single player. I don't know, just I'm comparing this back to like some of the more old school like Star Wars Battlefront, Star Trek Online, like Eve is actually really old and somehow relevant still.
Yeah, Steel's been going forever. I used to play. I played that when the Romulus expansion launched. That's a really good trailer too. And we live.
So as kind of MMOs have gotten bigger, and both in MMORPGs as well as other genres, have you really seen any like quality drop-offs or any specific niches that might not be filled as much? Like Destiny 2 is a good example of more of a niche because it's first-person shooter, and people don't generally think of first-person shooter as an MMO.
Planet side.
That's true.
PlanetSide's there too, but it's never become top few.
It's not a looter shooter too. Like Destiny's in the also in the looter shooter kind of area, which I feel like is a genre that's not explored enough for how much popularity the few entries in it gets. Like the Division games and Borderlands and Destiny are both really high profile franchises and have been for like more than a decade. But we don't get that many big looter shooter launches, or especially in like the kind of online live service space. Like we had a few like kind of double A area kind of ones, but it seems like the kind of genre that with the numbers it's pulled out sometimes that you'd think more companies would be jumping at trying to make more clones of it.
That's true. What was that game? The one that had the bunny skin that everyone was
Oh
freaking out
yeah,
about. That's like the most recent MMO like in that genre that we're talking about, the looter
yeah,
shooter.
the one that's just Warframe and Destiny at the same
Yeah,
time.
they like took those two games and they put them together and had like a baby
Yeah,
and
First Descendant.
yeah, that one. You know the problem with the way that MMOs have developed is that they've gotten to this like model where they try to sell you skins and they have all these microtransactions now. And like
Yeah,
back in the day when MMOs were newer, like in
yeah,
the 2000s, they had none of that. It
totally.
was you maybe WoW and it was WoW, EverQuest, and Guild Wars was back then, but Guild Wars didn't have a subscription. It had a subscription service, but you weren't getting like skins every month. You were
Sure.
just paying the sub because that was paying for the future content updates. And now it's just it feels like it's gotten to a point where all they're doing is doing a cash grab with the microtransactions. They're putting skins in, they're trying to put different weapon skins, or they're giving some kind of material crate thing or a
Right.
loot box that they want you to roll the dice on.
Now, I don't know about the loot boxes, but in terms of some of the microtransactions, it does make a little bit of sense because in that space, you're competing against players like World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy XIV, and both of those charge subscriptions per month. But if you're looking at other games that don't charge monthly subscriptions, like ArcAge, for example, ArcAge was a pretty good one, and that was one of the ones they first started to really pioneer other ways of doing pay to win. If you're not very familiar with ArcAge, they have an interesting open world building. So like if you just go and explore on the map, you can build a house there. Like there's a system of actually purchasing the land in the open worlds and building that. So if you go on a really old server, there might not actually be a lot of land because people have bought it already. One of the things they did was shift the currency required to buy those plots into a real world currency. So it quickly became those with money kind of became all of the real estate. And that really took away from anyone not willing to put money into it. And in a lot of ways, really drove ArcAge into the ground. This primary
Yeah.
ArcAge 1, it's rebranded as ArcAge 2 now.
Yeah, they changed a lot in the re-release. I played the first one too. I thought it was like districts. I don't remember you being able to put a house down in anywhere. I thought there was like land districts. But I do remember there were like people that had money that would just put in hundreds of dollars into the game, and they could find people that would sell them full armor sets, and if you had those armor sets, you just wouldn't lose in PvP or get ganked or anything. And you could have little land plots too in that game, like tiny ones that weren't that expensive. But everyone wanted the mansions.
Yeah, sure. That was a lot more. It was more popular before the pay to win currency rolled out for that section.
Who would have guessed?
Yeah, go
I
figure,
played
right?
that for a little bit. Yeah. I mean, everyone kind of runs from that. And that was probably like in the beginning, like in the transition period where MMOs were starting to get kind of older, and
Yeah.
the age median of the type of player that played MMOs was getting older. And so a lot of people were probably resistant to that type of thing being in the game. Because I don't know, the Black Lion chest is a loot box to me. I
It is a
never
loot
really
box.
buy them in Guild
Yeah.
Wars, but like I try to avoid playing games that have loot box things as a microtransaction option. I don't mind the skins, but like I don't know. I just don't like it. It's cringy to me.
Where I draw the line, because I've played some really grindy MMOs, think like Prison Tale, Space Cowboy, any other generic Korean MMO that you can think of, they tend to be incredibly grind heavy.
Oh yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you need to get the XP, you kill a mob, you get 0.002% of the XP to the next level. By the way, that's the fastest way to level up. Have fun killing thousands of these things. I
Yep,
feel like you
that's
got
a
to
lot of
find the in
BDO.
between there, right? And I think microtransactions can solve that, but you got to find a balance that doesn't overshadow the gameplay.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, but what you're saying is you're okay with there being like a catch up method through the pay to win or
Pay
like
to
the
progress.
microtransactions?
I think Guild Wars does it in a decent way, because most of it tends to be cosmetic or quality of life for some of the upgrades, and in a sense, many of them are permanent, but also not core to the game mechanic as well. And maybe picking on Eighth a little bit, but your
Yay.
average gotcha game, like how do
Yay.
you play a gotcha game and the microtransaction not be a center part of the game?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's true. If you're not willing to wail for those roles, like I had to stop playing Arc. Like Eighth got me into playing Arc
Arc Knights.
and Arc Knights, yeah, and it was
The
fine. It was
corruption.
fun, but like I got to a point in the story where it became so hard that I couldn't progress with my characters.
It
I
got
needed to
too
put
hard
money
to
into
press
it and
Surtur skill
roll.
3.
Listen, you can lend someone your a good character, which Eighth tried to do for me. I still couldn't beat the thing, but like you get to the point where like it's either you put in money into this game or you stop playing it, and I was
Grind.
trying to stay as free as possible. I think I put like
Yeah.
$2 or $3 in for like the beginner pack that you could put in,
Yeah,
but
starter
like
pack
after
set.
that, because I didn't want to put money into it, I just had to stop playing it. And I
Oh man, Lord of the Rings Online, that
Uh-oh.
was such a good example of exactly what you're describing. They originally were on a subscription model, and they wanted to change up and leverage their microtransaction shop more. And part of their strategy for that is they went to buy to own game and also free to play without requiring a subscription. That being said, the level cap at the time was, I think, 50. And once you got to around level 30, you can technically level up still, but you're basically locked out of every quest to level up, which is the primary way to level up, unless you paid.
So you had to grind?
It was either incredibly grindy or you had to pay to continue doing the story.
If you
Oh
didn't
my
pay, you were
God.
playing an Eastern MMO. If you did pay, you were playing a Western MMO.
Yeah, it wildly impacted the player experience beyond quality of life to the extent of you just didn't even get the story content because you're walking around all the stories NPCs killing mobs for hours instead.
That that's fucking toxic in the worst fucking way possible. I'm sorry. See, if I caught wind of that and I wanted to play that game, I just wouldn't have even played it, or I would have played it a little bit, found that out, and immediately fucking quit, because that's the type of shit that turns me the fuck off. It really grinds my fucking gears when game devs do that fucking shit. It's like, it to me it feels like a fucking trap. Like they're like, "Oh, gotcha. Now you got to give me some fucking money if you want to keep playing this game that you thought was fun. You fucking bastard."
Oh, I
You
got a
dumb
different take on
bastard.
that. Eternal
Uh,
Lands. This was never a very popular MMO. Very 2D isometric, fairly clunky mechanics, but it is still around and technically updated today.
I'll look this one up.
Wait, what is
In
it
this
called?
game,
I don't think I've
E-
ever heard this game.
Eternal Lands, it's not large.
3D
But
fantasy
to a certain point in
MMORPG.
that game, instead of microtransactions, they had a ton of focus on secrets in that game. So,
Huh.
like to get to a certain shop, I remember you had to go through a desert and you had to go through some bushes, and there was a odd-shaped rock in the back that you had to click, and then that would just teleport you into this library bookstore kind of place. And that was how you would
What?
unlock the things. Is you wanted to be a blacksmith, cool, go buy your book on blacksmithing. By the way, there's 10,000 pages in this book on blacksmithing, and your character can read one page every minute.
Oh.
So you straight up had to AFK with your game open for hours to like learn a recipe just to crash it.
It's a
Oh my
crypto mining
gosh.
scheme.
The secret part sounded kind of intriguing to me. That
Kinda
actually
cool, yeah.
sounded kind of fun. Like you
They
find a
had
secret
some
shop, but
good
like the
concepts, but
reading,
they didn't put
it
them
stopped at
together
the
in the
reading.
best way.
Jesus.
Give you online skills or something.
Yeah, I remember rage quitting after that because I was finally getting into where I was able to craft and able to get my own supply line of materials collected.
Rift had a
Oh,
lot of
you could
secrets too.
hide. They had a skeleton key system, right?
Oh.
So it was really kind of fascinating for some of the mining. So if you wanted to do a large transaction, like I wanted to sell you 5,000 iron or something, there is carry capacity. So you couldn't just carry that.
Yeah.
But you could do a skeleton key, right? Which you go to a certain coordinate system, and then it essentially removes it from visibility, but it doesn't remove it from existing. So any other player could, with the another skeleton key, if they had the coordinates of where you hid your treasure, they
Get
could
your
go to
stuff.
that spot and use that key. And hey, look, there's a box there.
Got him.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, you could be a little
Stash
pirate.
system, yeah. Get
That actually
Yarhar
sounds
the
really fun.
mateys.
That's a mechanic I have not seen in many games since, but it'd be
It
hard
makes
to
sense as a
implement
mechanic.
tastefully.
Yeah.
Is that an old MMO or is
Hmm.
Yeah, it's not recent.
okay? Yeah, because I've never even seen this game before. It kind of reminds me of RuneScape.
It was in
Yeah.
that time. It used the same OpenGL free 3D like graphic type.
Oh, really?
It first launched around 2003, so it was around that time. It was the earlier than
RuneScape took it from that same kind of browser to, I believe they are now client-based in their game. This took that same graphic engine and made it client-based first, or at least earlier than RuneScape.
Oh, okay.
Browser games used to be cool.
Browser games were like
It is
the
definitely
way
an
that I
MMO
started
of all time.
MMOs.
What was that, Slash?
That's how I started MMOs
Oh, really?
on browser with
Yeah.
RuneScape. RuneScape was my first
goated.
one. Back on dial-up.
I used to write like articles about RuneScape and got invited to one of the like community managers guilds in the game because they were retweeting my stuff on the RuneScape account. I was cool for a brief period of time.
No shit. What were you writing? Like tutorials on how to do stuff, or?
Yeah, I was like writing about new features, like is when they added that I think this was 2012 when they added like that rune crafting Sky Island place, and they had the beta for the new combat system and stuff like that. So writing articles on those different things. And that was also when PlanetSide 2 was coming out as well. That was in beta. What an exciting time. We had Team Fortress 2 was still getting updated. That was pretty hype. There's Meet the Pyro. We had like Meet the Pyro, PlanetSide 2, all the RuneScape stuff all back to back. Well, so I feel like 2012 was a hype year for gaming. I'm trying to remember why. I mean, that was some of the reasons, but what else happened in 2012? Well, Guild Wars 2 came out in 2012, right? The end of
Guild Wars
2012.
2
Was
was a 2012 release, yep.
Yeah.
Star Wars Old Republic was end of year 2011, so that sort of bled into 2012.
Oh yeah, Mass Effect 3, Far Cry 3, Dishonored, Borderlands 2, Assassin's Creed 3. That was a
I think
Yeah,
stacked
that was a
year.
crazy year.
That's a
I was in
stacked
college
year.
then. Skyrim came out around that time too.
That was 2011, yeah. That was the end of the golden era. Because then you had Guild Wars 2, ESO came out I think 2013, and then Final Fantasy 14 relaunched somewhere around. And ESO might have been in 2014 actually. Final Fantasy 14 relaunched and retconned the old Final Fantasy 14. Nobody even thinks about that one. Like,
Wait, whoa, what? Wait, it got retconned? What do you mean?
there's two Final Fantasy 14s. One of them you know about, and one of them nobody thinks about anymore because the original one was less good. So they made they made a like entire remake of the game, an entirely new game, and also named it Final Fantasy 14, and that's why it's called A Realm Reborn. And they shut down the
What?
original one.
That's interesting. I was not aware of that. Yeah, it
Me
looks like
neither.
it did launch initially, and the one that people know today as Final Fantasy 14 launched in late 2013. The one that Eighth was referring to was pulled off the market in 2010.
Why did they? Do you know why they did it? Did the first one flop or something?
First one was a flop. Yeah, it was really rough.
It looks like they pushed it. It was in it. They didn't really have good ways to push updates to in games at that time, and they were pioneering the releasing games that weren't completed yet. So it
Oh
worked a
gosh.
little better in 2013 in a patched model. The 14 earlier release was heavy console focus actually.
Oh well, if they were trying to push it on console, that's probably why it failed because
I
people.
mean, the
I
modern
think
one is
console.
too.
Yeah, but I don't know that they specifically push MMOs on consoles very often
Yeah,
because I think the bulk
typically
of
no, but
MMOs
that
are on
is
PC.
something Final Fantasy 14 is specifically known and market for is the console market.
Yeah, because the single
Specifically
player ones,
PlayStation.
right? Yeah,
No,
yeah, because they
Digital
no,
have
the
the
Knights bringing up
console
it
they have
had
the
war.
too
exclusive.
too strong a graphic requirements. Oh yeah, the engine was like falling apart at the time, wasn't it, for the console?
The engine
Mm,
has not aged well, even
Yeah.
as an MMO.
Well, that was I thought that the
sheesh.
engine they have now is even kind of a newer-ish or tuned engine from from
They might have done
that.
a little bit of an uplift, but from my understanding, some core things in the game, even today, such as inventory management, are corely linked to some engine limitations.
They just did a
But
graphics overhaul too a little bit ago.
if you look at most MMORPGs, you'd have your typical like ability bar, right? One of the standard setups in Final Fantasy 14 is actually setting the ability bars up like a PlayStation controller, more in like the cardinal direction for buttons
Yeah.
kind of thing, instead of the typical horizontal bar for abilities.
I played 14 on a Steam Deck as well. I tried it on Steam Deck, and yeah, it takes learning to do all of the stuff at higher level on a gamepad. It's entirely doable. People do good at it, but I do not have the muscle memory for it because it's like,
Yeah,
once you have 15 or 20 skills or
if you
30 skills or
console game a
whatever.
lot, really good for that. If you're not very familiar with the controller, it definitely has some pretty big learning curves. Really.
Nice.
But yeah, 14 is the original one was actually even on here. It's like it was a commercial and critical failure, and then they gave it Yoshi P is the new director. The current butcher's name Yoshida.
So I don't know how
He
much you
took
know about
over.
it, but I'm just kind of curious. Do you know if they really changed anything, or if it was just a repackaging of it in the 2013 release
Oh, they
and like
changed
the
a
same
lot. It
story?
was there's a whole 2-part no clip documentary on it, but from what I remember, that guy Yoshi P, the current director of it, producer, he took over the team and they started updating the original game, but he also cut the team in half. And half the team started working on an entirely new game, and like the Final Fantasy 14 we know now does take place in the same setting and stuff. It takes place after, it's basically a sequel kind of, and occasionally it references stuff that happened in that one, but it is an entirely different game. I think it's maybe even a different engine. Oh yeah, it has right here. They used a new engine, so they made us like, and I think they did this in only like 3 years, so like a lot less time than you would usually make an MMO in with half of a team. They cut the team in half to like keep trying to work on the original one, so it didn't suck for the people that were playing it. And then they also built a new engine and a new game at the same time, and then named that 14 and basically retcons the old one.
A lot of midnight oil spent on that one, I'm sure.
Yeah.
That
I was
one
thinking
was
that
like an
too.
insane strategy. That's
Bro
that was,
Yoshi came in and freaking took over, dismissed half the team, and was cracking the whip on the ones that were left over.
I don't think they, at least I don't know, they pretty much left the team as it was, but like split them up into which things they were working on. But the original leadership were gone.
Yeah,
But
I mean,
Yoshi
clearly
P's a
they had
big.
poor decision making if they released a game with a lot of bugs and stuff, that it was bad enough that people didn't want to play it and they had to relaunch.
I think they were the producers that made the previous Final Fantasy MMO. Was that 10? I think it might have been 10, 10 or 9.
It was in MMO for 10?
Or was it 11? There was another Final Fantasy that wasn't.
Oh yeah, it wasn't 10. I think I think you are right. It's 11. That was mainly console, right?
Yeah, it was 11. I think it was the same like directors or producers that made that, and then they made 14, but it not good that time. The original 11 was 2002. Is that old? Dang.
Whoa.
I
That
thought it'd
predates
been like mid
WoW
2000s
and
or something.
Guild Wars.
Yeah, May 16th, 2002.
Shoot, that's like around EverQuest release date, I guess. That was who it was competing against.
Yeah, the OG MMO days. And then like actually it wasn't, Anarchy Online was also out by then too, wasn't it? That was like 2001 or something. I was like, when was that? Yeah,
Oh,
2001, June 27, 2001.
I've heard
Anarchy
that
Online
game.
was goated.
I've
I like
never
that
played
game.
that or even seen pictures of that one.
That one was really cool. That was like the era of MMOs right there, like early 2000s, like 2003 specifically, probably to like maybe up to I don't know 2008, somewhere in there. Maybe the prime. It might go later, like probably the Guild Wars 2 ESO Final Fantasy 14
I
era is
think
like the
for
end of the
me,
prime.
I think prime for me would be like 2005 to 2010. Because that would encompass the Burning Crusade for World of Warcraft, which was the first expansion, and
Yeah.
it had during its heyday, and where it revolutionized the PvP MMO experience with the GVG mode that it had that never made it into Guild Wars 2.
So you see, in Guild Wars 2, we don't have guilds and we also don't have wars.
Fly for Fun and Ace Online both released
Fli-
around 2006 as well.
I remember Fliff
Oh yeah, I remember Fly for Fun. Fliff. I didn't play it, but I remember everyone always talking about it and saying that.
and Maple Story. Maple Story was big.
Oh yeah, that was another web-based one, or web browser-based one, right?
That's still going somehow.
I haven't played that one, but I played another one that would look kind of like it that was called Ragnarok Online.
Oh yeah, I remember Ragnarok.
That one was
Perfect
like
World
one of those
Online was pretty
grindy
big.
ones that you were talking about earlier, Ross, where you have to like kill thousands upon thousands of the same mob over and over and over to get one level.
Oh yeah, those are definitely takes a different kind for that. Black Desert
You have to
is
have
So
patience.
different.
a modern one that is very much on that grind set as well.
Yep.
I played it
MMO
for a
grind set.
while, but it was so hard because the combat in that game is like combo based. It's almost like it's made to be played with a controller, I feel like, because the combos are, for me, I don't know, maybe my fingers are not fast
Yeah,
enough,
no, but
but
that was
it
really
was
sweet
difficult.
and
They
unique
call it
take
Fat
on the
Finger
combat.
Slash. The
Yeah.
Instead of
combat's
pushing
great.
a button, your fireball button to do a fireball, it's more like left, right, up, down, A, B, and that's your fireball.
Yep.
And it contextual stuff too. So it'd be like, say you're doing Shift W to go into one attack, and that opens up Shift E as another attack. But if you press S while right clicking after those two attacks, then that's another thing.
Mm-hmm.
The combos.
Yep.
It's
Yep. Yep.
pretty
I remember trying to
sophisticated.
cheese it with like macros with my Razer mouse software and my Razer Black Widow macro keys, and it did not work. It worked a little bit, but
Amazing.
like because of the consecutive different combos that you could go to, like the different
Yeah.
options you had, it really didn't work the way that I wanted it to.
It's
So I
already
couldn't
too
cheese it.
complex for that to help.
DC Universe in the from the comic section. That's a not like Marvel Rivals now would be a shooter version, but DC had an attempt at that prior at doing MMO as well. There's a DC Universe Online, and it also
Yeah.
the gameplay in it is similar to BDO. The attacks are combo based.
Oh, really? I didn't play DCUO ever.
If you like the comic book lore, it's pretty good gameplay. If you're not
Yeah.
really into that, it might not catch your attention.
Well,
And Adam
question.
Rises.
Is that game the one that you create a superhero like from scratch, or is that something
Yes,
else? Okay, so it's
DC
a
Universe,
custom
you
one
would.
that you come up with.
There are stories and like NPCs where like there's Superman or like whatever the superhero pre-made, but yeah, you create your own superhero for the universe.
Okay, yeah. I think I remember playing that and having a lot of fun playing it. There was a few games that were like that. I think there was a single player one too that you could play where you created your own hero, and it wasn't online. There was like a few that came out in a row that were like competing for market share for a while. I'm not sure. I wonder why those don't stay prevalent. I feel like there's a lot of people that are into like Marvel superheroes and DC universe stuff. So it seems like out of the ordinary that there wouldn't be at least one that was still going now.
Black Desert's probably the biggest one in that genre I can think is still going now, at least in terms of frequent updates.
Yeah, City of Heroes has been like resurrected as private servers, I think, or as like fan made servers.
Oh yeah, City. That's the game that I was thinking of. It was it.
NCSoft granted a license to the people operating one of the rogue servers, like official permission to host the game.
Oh, that's cool. Like they weren't gonna go after them or anything. Did they release
Yeah.
the source code so that people could do that or?
Yeah, in April, it sounds like April 2019. You released the source code, and then that was January of last year. NCSoft granted one of the teams running their own server a license to host the game officially. I actually
That's
didn't know
cool.
that was NCSoft, or didn't remember that. It was back to Guild Wars 2. That's an NCSoft
Definitely
property.
wasn't Blizzard.
Yeah. Well, funny that you mentioned that. I think the other day I was reading an article. Has nothing to do with MMOs. I don't think this is. I think it's considered more an RTS, but there's a game called Command and Conquer that EA owns the rights to, and they just released the source code to the public so that they could make mods for it and make new missions and stuff. And that's a pretty old game from the 90s. They updated it recently and made a new one that's like remastered with new graphics and stuff. But they released the code for it so that it could build a little hype and build a modding community, which is kind of cool. I love to see it when see that type of thing when developers do that.
Was that for the remaster they released the modding for, or for their 95 release?
That I don't know for sure, but I would imagine that they would have released it for the new game to drive sales of the new one.
Oh, dang.
And it's actually, I think I just saw it on the Steam sale just now for like 70% off.
All right, so City of Heroes and Villains was Cryptic, which is the Star Trek Online and Neverwinter devs. I didn't know they also made a Magic the Gathering MMO that shut down before it exited open beta. That's rough.
Was it like
Wildstar, you
a
said?
trading card thing? Or
No, Magic the Gathering. They're making an MMO based off of it that they canceled before the end of the open beta. Remember, Neverwinter was pretty big for a while too.
yeah, it was. I remember wanting it and then I never ended up getting it.
Oh, DDO was pretty cool. Dungeons and Dragons Online. I remember that one being
Played
cool.
a lot of that one, actually.
That had action combat before action combat was cool. That and Metin 2. I played Metin 2 way back. That was another one that had action combat.
It was very dice-based, and never had a ton of frames in it, but it did have a really good first foot forward into the action combat than many other games at the time of release that I could see.
It controlled well, yeah. And it had the GM and stuff. I remember that game being cool. I had wanted to play the crap out of it as a kid. I only got to play it a little bit.
I think it quickly got dated when like World of Warcraft released like Burning Crusade and
Yeah.
beyond that, but up until then it did hold itself pretty good.
And they had guild airships, right? That's something I've always wanted in Guild Wars too. Like if we had the DDO guild airships where we could fly an airship around maps, that would be sick.
Be some pretty sweet PvP mode.
All right, just go full on what's that game? Guns of Icarus. Just go full Guns of Icarus, guild v guild. Are there MMOs that are coming up that any of us are excited for?
I haven't
MMOs that
heard
are
of any
coming
new
up.
ones that are really being in development.
I mean,
Are there any
yeah,
expected to come out soon?
there's ones that are mostly Korean, but I mean, there's
Well,
there's
Western ones.
Ashes of Creation, which might come out in like 2092. The Chrono Odyssey
Right,
looked
it'll
kind of
come out
cool.
right at the time as Star Citizen, I'm sure.
Star Citizen actually might beat it, but Star Citizen might come out first.
I Ashes of Creation is a pretty wild one. It's one of those that's been in alpha and beta for kickstarted in 2017, so it's been about 10 years. Eight so far that they've had servers online for.
Yeah. And like you
I don't
can
know
buy
much
into
about
the
this
betas.
one.
It
It
looks
looks kind of cool
good.
though.
It's
Yeah.
been in open alpha since 2019.
How much does it cost to get into Alpha 2?
I feel like it's somewhat indicative and telling that I haven't heard much about this game. It must not be very good.
I mean, it's been the hype MMO for a long time. Just it's been so long that it's like,
There is one that's coming that I'm interested in seeing, but I'm not sure if it's going to be good. It's the Dune one.
Oh yeah. I think
I
that
have
would
my
be
eye
fun.
on it, but I don't know if I don't want to get my hopes up because it feels like every time that a new game, it doesn't even matter if it's MMO or not. It just feels like the releases are always really rough and bug filled. It feels like the game wasn't slotted to release at that time, and there's always issues with the servers or bugs or something. And then once I get a game and I drop like $60-$70, which is what they want nowadays for a brand new game, I don't want to have to deal with bugs or bull crap when I'm
BS, yeah.
trying to like learn how to play the game. If I run into something that's gonna cause me to crash, it's just gonna make me want to refund the game and stop playing it.
But we can pay to be Q&A testers. It's a great business model for the corporation.
Yeah.
It does look pretty interesting. It looks like it offers a little bit of base building. You can kind of build your faction and expand control. So there's a little bit of in-game PvP that it suggests will be there. There's different ways you can do groups. There, it looks like there's in-game vehicles and stuff like that that you can use for mounts and fast travel. Yeah, I'd say this is definitely one to keep an eye on. Curious how
Oh, now it's soon,
it'll
too.
be stability-wise. Uh, I know that this one is being advertised as a so also console friendly as well. It's advertising for PS5 as well as Xbox One, as well as PC. Cross-platform things always, in what I've seen, tend to have rockier launches. So definitely optimistic for it, but keep an eye on it, see how it goes.
Full circle all the way back to Funcom somehow, because I was talking about Anarchy Online earlier, which was Funcom. And of course, Secret World also Funcom. So, like, Dune looks pretty much like a party mix of all the stuff they worked on previously, because they made a lot of MMOs. They made, Secret World, Anarchy Online, and then they made Conan, Age of Conan, and then they made Conan Exiles after that, which that was one I forgot about. That was like DDO era as well. I thought Age of Conan was big roughly around that era. And then
They
yeah,
advertise Sandbox, but I'm almost a little curious how many Destiny 2-esque they might make it where it is MMO, but there's kind of a relatively low limit per map, and it's heavily sharded. So
for
I'm
Dune.
curious if it'll be Sandbox one server or how that kind of
And
would
I
shake
think as
out.
I understand it from like they had a bunch of dev interviews and stuff, but I mean a lot of the game is like Conan Exiles but MMO. Uh so you'll have maps that'll still be pretty big and it's probably I don't know, there's a good amount of players on them, but they are sharded out. And then you have like the super big maps where you're like actually going for spice mining and stuff, and that's where like all the PvP and stuff happens, and that map is like super massive and would have a ton of players. So it's like somewhere between the two. There was Last Oasis, if either of you remember that game. That was sort of like that where like instead of being full survival game where it's like you literally join an individual server, it's like you had a bunch of shards, and each of those shards was a different region on the world map, and you were moving from one map to the other, like trying to outrun the sun melting shit.
That's the
And
one where
well,
you're on a boat, right? Or
yeah,
like an airship thing?
you build like land ships, the land sail ship things.
Yeah.
Oh, I think some of the structure is probably going to be kind of like that, like somewhere between MMO instancing and survival game instancing. Like you have bigger maps, but then it's also it's probably not thousands of players. Maybe it's probably hundreds of players. I'm guessing.
Oh, so like that's what you mean by like a cell, or so like you're gonna be grouped with like maybe 1,000 other players at a time.
You'll have how many people you have in your instance, and then if you move to another map, that's like its own instance, and then there's like the big maps for spice mining. Like I think the smaller maps are like safer basically, and then when you go into the deep desert where you're like actually trying to retrieve spice and stuff, that's when shit gets real, and that's like a way bigger map but also way more dangerous.
Yeah.
It's like the 0 sec space in Heave or something. It's like that's when it's full PvP and stuff out there. And then you're trying to retrieve that and get that back to your base.
I hope that they do the open world PvP in this game a lot better than other, like I want it to feel kind of like the way that World of Warcraft felt in vanilla WoW, where if you went into like an alliance territory with a horde character, anyone there could instantly jump on you because you're an enemy. In vice versa, it was the same thing. And then there was like contested areas, like so in this game, like the desert where the spice is, that would be contested. But then you're safe if you're in your hometown territory or whatever, because
So a
there's
little
different
more
races in
organic.
Dune,
You'd have
right?
to go out your way a little more to PvP if you're in a safer area, but at the same time, it's open world and it's not limited to only structured areas.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like this is from the AI overview of it, but this sounds about right. Of see, uh, some like the deep desert map would be like up to 500 players, and then the other ones would be around 100 players, and then there's like small maps. Like I think you start out in like a small map probably, and that's 40 players. So it's like
Like
depending
a
on
beginner
where you
area.
are. Yeah.
I see. Yeah, so
With server
that sounds like
messing.
it could be cool.
Which I think it'd be cool to see an actual like a survival MMO actually done well, like with the MMO part intact, because most of them are like, this is basically just a survival game, or like, they're not really they're doing one genre or the other genre and trying to portray that they're doing both. But Funcom probably does actually have the expertise to do both genres simultaneously.
Yeah, because they have so many different types of games under their belt over
Yeah.
a long period, right?
Those two types of games are the only types of games they've been making for 20 years.
Yeah, well, hopefully that translates into like best practices incorporated all into this game.
I'm surprised how much runtime we ended up getting out of Dune specifically. Sponsored? We're sponsored.
Send us
Yo,
the game.
Funcom,
Give us
can you
some keys.
give us that Anarchy Online money, Funcom, from the like 7 subscribers left. When Anarchy Online 2? That game was hype. That game had the player built cities, and you had like mechs, you had the Yamahas, which were like flying vehicles you could fly around. It had procedurally generated missions. The skill system was crazy. You could fast travel through like a computer world. You went into the Matrix to like fast travel around as a Tron cube. Like that game was wild. You had cyberpunk metropolises.
Damn, I missed all that. I never got into that game at all.
I feel like old MMOs had like feature sets that would be just like they would be the kind of things we'd put in the like Kickstarter stretch goals now, but never actually accomplished. Like the fact that Star Wars Galaxies that had so much shit going on in one game. It's like you had the large scale PvP, you had space combat with like actual space game mechanics, you had ship interiors, you had city building, you had like a whole crafting and social system, you had player bounty hunting. It's like this is like Star Citizen, what Star Citizen sounds like it wants to be. Some of these old games had already accomplished 20 years ago.
That's true, but they didn't always package them the best.
But can you catch up to modded Minecraft?
Yeah, the real challenge.
I feel like I should check out Throne and Liberty again because it apparently got like a free expansion that doubled the map size. So it seems like it's being updated well.
I stayed away because everyone that I talked to said that it was pay to win, but they weren't explaining why it was pay to win. can you buy gear or something with real money, or what is the pay to win aspect of the game?
I don't know how it ends up being pay to win, but I mean, it probably can be. It's probably like other Korean MMOs, where if you want to compete at the leaderboard high end, you have to either
skipping
grind
time or
super
something.
hard or something. Maybe.
Oh, there's like some kind of overpowered catch up mechanic or something.
Not sure.
I mean, the
Look
game
it up.
kind of looks just like Guild Wars, like a better version of Guild Wars and a different theme, kind
It
of.
was originally going to
interesting.
be on the Guild Wars 2 engine before they switched to Unreal Engine, but it was going to be literally the Guild Wars 2 game engine.
Oh,
Which is
so it was gonna
probably
be a reskin.
Yeah, I think
probably a
their
good
heart
idea. Not
system
just
is pretty identical, or at
they
least
do have
heavily
hard system. Yep,
used there.
the game has a lot of Guild Wars 2 inspiration, which is not a bad thing. I would say the combat, at least when I played it at launch, was really cool, but the target system was really annoying. Like Guild Wars 2 will let you fire off skills even if you don't have something targeted. But from what I remember, Throne and Liberty, sometimes that was not the case, so it did not feel as responsive as it otherwise could. But they did seem like they improved that a fair amount between like from beta to launch and stuff. It got a lot better, but I felt like while the combat looks a lot better than Guild Wars 2's, Guild Wars 2's mechanically felt more fluid. But it could be different now. But the content from what I played was cool. The tech was really neat. Like there was no loading. When you fast traveled, it was instant. Like it did a cool warp effect, and you
Oh,
just showed up there wherever, no loading screen. Like it instantly, their asset streaming was
seamless.
awesome.
Yeah, I like that. That's rare,
I
especially
mean, it
on
is
something
free
like
to
that.
play, and it has like they have stuff where like some of the world events will become open PvP. Like I wandered into a world boss that was one of those ones where like there'll be either PvE or PvP at different times from how I remember. Like if it's at night or something, and I wandered into that, so trying to hit the world boss, also getting ganked by other players trying to hit the world boss. It's a clustercluck.
That's funny.
Let's see.
Sounds
How is
kind of
it pay
fun
to
though.
win? All I'm finding is people arguing about if it's pay to win or not. What is the part that's pay to win? Help me understand.
Everyone that I've talked to, they can't articulate what is the pay to win thing about it. But they all say that it's there, and I'm like, what is going on? What is the pay to win?
It sounds like it's probably maybe like the BDO thing. Like if you want to keep up in PvP, you're gonna have a hard time as free to play. I feel like I care less about being on PvP leaderboards though. Like I'm not gonna try and out no life people that are playing fucking PvP in an MMO for 80 hours a day. So
Yeah,
Well, you gotta have
I
that
mean,
microtransaction skin for that 10% damage buff, right? Just
yep.
like in Marvel Rifles.
yeah,
Nobody will explain how. I don't know. Man.
yeah. I even tried to delve into the Steam reviews to see
Yeah.
where the people are complaining, and no one in here is like. Some of them are saying that it's pay to win, but they're not saying why.
You got me really curious to try to play this game now.
I'll
To answer
install it
this
again. I
question.
had bought one of the bundles, like cheaper bundles or something at launch. Like I thought it was fun. It was like, yeah, this is like playing Guild Wars 2 but in Unreal Engine, which is just fine. That's just fine with me. I'll always take more Guild Wars. It's just Korean Guild Wars this time. But it had the world events and all that stuff, world bosses. I don't think the world events were done. Granted, I was in earlier zones, but most of them weren't as cool as Guild Wars 2's like meta events and shit. Maybe that changes later. I don't know. They had like open world dungeon things, kind of like ESO, where like you delve, or BDO, like you delve into the open world dungeons and farm those. Which is that's actually something I liked about ESO, is they had a good amount of that kind of content that was the stuff you typically see in instances, but in the open world. I thought that was done pretty decent most of the time. Some of which were actually hard, like the was it Greymore? Some of those Greymore like world events were fairly dangerous.
All right, I got some Throne of Liberty details. It looks like there's a Lucent currency, which is the special shop currency. A large number of consumables that are commonly used are only sold there. And it seems like there's a battle pass type system for things.
Oh, okay. So in order to play the game comfortably,
Subscription
you need to
adjacent.
have a sub, basically.
Yeah, I can see it. It's like subscription adjacent, maybe for being able to play it kind of at all. But you technically don't need that.
Yeah, but it's like the same thing with Guild Wars. Like technically you can play Guild Wars for free, but guess what? You can't use the auction house. You don't have any mounts. You don't have a glider. You don't, like
Yeah.
it's just not
You're
Pretty
a
gonna
fun
have a
limited.
much
MMO.
better time if you spend some money. However,
Yeah.
in Guild Wars, it seems more you spend the money once still, and in this, it seems more special pass based. You get so many for this pass instead of you can just buy infinite with gems whenever.
I see. So that kind of reminds me of you can play Elder Scrolls Online for free. That you have to buy the expansions just like Guild Wars, but there's a sub thing that you can get that gives you access to like a crafting bank or something, like some kind of storage thing where you can put a bunch of materials and items. And when you play the game free to play, your bags get full very fast.
Yep, the
And then
materials
if
are
you don't
crazy.
have that storage thing from giving them like the $8 or $9 a month, the game is like the quality
Inventory
of life is
management.
just not there. It's like you're half the time you're trying to figure out what should I throw away and what should I pick up or what should I keep, what should I try to sell, like, and it just becomes like an inventory management nightmare.
Yay.
It kind of sounds like Throne and Liberty has the same thing, except like it maybe the leveling process is less friendly to free to play players, and with those quality of life items that you're getting from the battle pass, it's tolerable.
All right. Yep. Ross brought up time check. Is there anything else we want to discuss? Remember, we can edit things. Time travel.
No, I can't think of anything now. I mean, we covered a large swath of our personal experiences. Ross has a lot of like out of the way MMO niche knowledge. Like I've played Arcade before. I didn't realize he'd played it, and he's played a few other things that I haven't even heard of. So that was good. I had fun hearing and talking through the topic with you guys.
Yeah. And we have more stuff we could cover, like more specific in MMO topics later too, or topics written down for like sandbox MMOs or private servers and emulators and stuff like that. So the MMO
Yeah,
genre
it's
has
such
a
a
lot
big
of stuff you
topic.
can
There's a lot
mine
of
out
things
of
we
it.
could cover.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us for our Lost Age of MMOs episode, everybody. And we'll be back again next week with more cringe.
See you next time.
Yeah.